Hello, everybody. Welcome to the first
Hello.
episode of Season 2 of the Notion in Practice podcast. It's good to be back, Jerwin.
It's very exciting.
And you are far, far away, all the way over the oceans in Japan.
I am. And it's finally, I'm 10 hours away from Sydney, or like 11 hours from Melbourne, and it's only an hour time difference. Isn't that crazy? Just visited the Notion Japan office, and that's like a little photo that we took. And yeah, I'm learning lots of things that I'm excited to share with the podcast, actually. How are things down there in Geelong?
Same, mate. It's a bit cold this time of year, but I'm keen to get into Season 2. I mean, to be fair, we didn't really think about seasons when we got started, right? We just got started because we wanted to make a podcast that gave people the ability to, I guess, see into real examples of Notion being used to run businesses. And at the time that we started, there was a lot of stuff about AI. I mean, Notion AI had really just taken a huge leap forward. Custom agents were, I think, like on the way or just arrived. And so there was a bunch to talk about in AI land, but the Notion world is much bigger than that. And there's a bunch of, I guess, setup to make sure that when you're using AI inside Notion, it works really well. And so this season, we want to focus ourselves on the integration and automation layer of Notion. It's something that has recently grown as well. Notion had their kind of developer day and launched things like workers and the command line. But automations and integrations has been a feature around Notion for a while. And so we want to kind of dive in on that and give people an understanding of the potential of that. This episode is really going to be just trying to introduce the theme and the topic and help people get their head around what does this really mean and how should we think about it. And then, of course, in the subsequent episodes, we're going to interview businesses that are really using it. They've got it working in practice, and it, we'll explore the ways it's worked to the ways it hasn't, and the real lessons that other people can learn.
I'm excited, Tim. So talk through actually integrations and automations. Like, where does that fit foundationally wise?
Yeah, well, I think maybe I'll share my screen. I've got this image that I think is a helpful way of framing it up. So let me just share this. So I will often think about the digital operating system of the business, not just any one part of it, but the overall picture. And so I think, this is sort of an example piece to help us visualize it. And I think about this digital operating system in 4 parts. You've really got the whole world that the business runs on. And we're talking about what platforms are used and what work is done. Where is this happening and what's happening there. So it's all about like where things are stored. And most businesses have like a range of platforms. Pretty rare that anyone's just operating in one digital world, right? Everyone at least will have email and calendar and docs or something like that. But this is an example here. I've got Notion, Google, HubSpot, Xero, just example platforms. Insert your platforms here. But these platforms, I think most people's digital worlds, they're more like an archipelago, right? If those platforms are islands, then they're like a series of disconnected islands where people are working in one and then they'll go over to another one and work over there. But those worlds are not connected. They don't talk to each other. They're not synced in any way. And so this is why we have multiple sources of truth, disconnected information or putting the same information in multiple places. And so anyway, that's the world. The work is really the tasks that happen. So all of the actions that change the state of the things that are being worked on. Maybe a task gets completed or a document gets written or a decision gets made. But that's the work itself. And the work kind of can get divided into 2 categories, which is really relevant at the moment because humans could do both of these categories. But when we get machines to help, it's kind of going to like use some machines for one type and another for the other type. So I like to break the work into thinking about, well, there's deterministic work there, and deterministic just meaning that like what the inputs are going to be and what the outputs are going to be. And so you can write a formula to say, do this, and if this happens, do that. If the other thing happens, do this. And sometimes those automations, those sequences, they're really complicated, the if this, then that, but it's still always like able to be predetermined. And that's where code comes in. That's where classically things like automations and tools like Zapier and Make and N8N and that sort of stuff, that's been the realm of that. And Notion has some built-in ones. And then the other type of work is intelligent work, which everybody's very excited about at the moment, because for the first time, we've got machine players who can get involved with the intelligent work, right? And they can make judgment about things, can understand the broader context and think about it and make a decision. So that's the work. And then you've got the players, the operators who are doing the work. And so you can see in this little diagram here, we've got like some people, some humans, and then we've got some robots who are sort of made to sort of represent, like the code machine-based type. And then you got these little floaty human-looking but not quite human things that are meant to be AI. I don't know what's going on with this one. Clearly AI generated. He's got one leg. He's floating. He's like Casper the Friendly Ghost. But yeah, those three players now are available to do that work for us in these digital operating systems. So sometimes it's still the right thing to get a human to do something that's deterministic. Certainly the right thing to do a human to do something that's thinking. But often too now we'll find ourselves getting machines to play the automation role and machines to play the thinking judgment role, being AI. And so those three things, the world, the work, the players, they're all governed by the last thing that makes up a digital operating system, and that's the rules, the structure that sits around the whole thing that makes sure it doesn't fall apart. And so when we put all that together, you can see the key role that something like automation and integration play to make these worlds talk to each other, to bring the right context into one place. Like often we're talking about bringing the right context into the Notion world. You need an automation that can reliably do that, so that when you want to do some thinking here, you've got all the context that you need. You've got all the insight. And so in practical terms, that might mean piping emails from Google into the Notion world, so that when AI is looking at your project, it can see the emails that have been sent, as well as the meetings that have been had, as well as the tasks that have been done, as well as the documents that have been created. So to make this world more complete, or to make this digital operating system whole, we use automations. They are what power integrations most of the time.
Right. And so talk me through this visual, Tim. Is this coming through your current setup, or a state that you've built with all these new features that Notion have released?
These particular ones?
Yeah.
I mean, well, for most of the last 10 years, we've had versions of integrations. Earlier days, they were weaker. So there was a time when Notion didn't have an API, which meant it was very hard to get it to talk to any external tools, or not an official API. But then at that time, Notion had their own kind of integrations. Like you could always make it talk a little bit with Slack, for instance. But then as time's gone on, the world, I think in a lot of ways you could say it's opened up. Like a lot of these platforms now will actively support you to integrate with other tools. And Notion, that's a real feature. It's a huge part of how they are supporting users. And I think their business model too is to say, hey, you can use us as the system of record, as the source of truth. You can bring other context in here, and Notion can be the brain of the whole thing. And that's what we do a lot of the time. So for us at Smooth Ops, like we're on Google for email and calendaring. And so we have automation, we have integrations that make that world talk to our Notion world. We use Xero for our accounting. So whenever we send an invoice, and we have, I built a Notion worker that will allow me to press a button in my Notion world, take all the information about an invoice and a client or whatever, push it over to Xero, create that invoice, and then sync the status of that invoice back into the Notion world, so we can see what's going on with it from there. So we've done a bunch of this.
That's really cool. Okay. So in terms of this map, right, I'm just looking into this visual. If Notion is the operating system, then where do workers then sit next to like custom agents and database automations?
Yeah. Well, so I think the whole thing is the operating system. You can't sort of avoid the fact that businesses are going to work on these different platforms. And it's smart if you can consolidate them for sure, but there's always going to be multiple parts to it. The Notion workers piece at the moment is built so that it runs on the back end of Notion. So we'll have a look at it in the interface in a minute. But
yes, please.
The Notion workers piece, in some ways, it replaces Zapier and Make and N8N and those kinds of tools, because what it allows you to do is run code on the Notion platform that will like perform actions for you, whatever you can get code to do, which is quite a lot. So it can be triggered by something like a webhook, which you know you can configure a Notion button to create, or an external system could send a webhook and then kick off this bit of code that runs on the Notion platform. And it's super powerful because it's connected to your Notion workspace. So it's inside this account that you already have, and you set it up and authenticate it like as yourself on Notion. So you don't have to have a third party middleman. Like, I don't know if many people thought about it, but you were sort of trusting Zapier, if it sat in between, say, Notion and Google for you, to hold your credentials, for your data to get routed through there. And so for a lot of our clients, like, the data is sensitive. If they don't have to have a third party, they'd much rather not to. And some of them haven't been able to do it. But now you can host the code and the automation living kind of at the Notion end, which you already are trusting, and have it talk directly to, say, like your Outlook service or your accounting tool or whatever it is. So, and then custom agents that we spent a lot of time last season talking about, they also live on the Notion platform. So it's AI that lives natively on the Notion platform. Now we're starting to hear more about agents that actually live in other worlds. Like, let's say one of these islands was Claude. Now you're actually able to have, well, increasingly, it's becoming available to people, the ability to have external agents that live in another world, but have them visible to you inside of Notion, and manage them from inside of Notion. So this digital operating system, like these bridges, they're becoming multi-layered and, kind of complex, whereas it's really not that long ago where the worlds were very, very separate and you couldn't make them talk to each other.
Just a question that's popped in my head is I really want to ask you, to throw you on the spot, but like, where is the line here now that you have custom agents, automations, you've got workers, but like, what should like never be an AI job, and what should always be like a worker's job? Like, how do we define that line between this visual now?
Yeah. Well, I think there's quite a art in determining what is the nature of this task. We talked about, like, in the digital operating system, the idea of the work. So when you look at a job that needs to be done, oftentimes jobs are actually bundles of tasks. If you say, I don't know, like onboard a client, there's a whole lot of steps that happen in there. Or even something like, maybe I could describe like our process. We'll often get a referral from someone or Notion directly to say, hey, here's someone that you should work with. And so we have this onboarding step. Now that onboarding step it's not one process. There's multiple pieces to it. We receive an email, and then within that email, we need to sort of take the details, like the person and the company and, what the blurb that they say about the job or whatever. We take all those items and we put them into our Notion world. We spin up a company and a person and a project or whatever. And then we also try and work out, how should we, like, is this a good job? Does this fit us? We think about, does this client actually sort of tick the boxes of people that we want to work with? And then how should we respond? There's all of these different steps in there. Now, some of those are obviously like made for little robot guys, right? It's like, take this email address and go to that database and create a new entry and put the email address in there. There's there's no thinking required. There's no judgment. It's just plumbing. Just move this information around in this very clear, organized, predetermined way. But if, let's say, they filled out a form and we want a nice, clear summary of that form, you can't get like predetermined logic to give you a nice summary. That's the perfect job for AI. It's a perfect job for an LLM to take all those words, make sense of them, and turn them into, 2 or 3 sentences about this, or, judge those responses that have come in against this, this rubric that we've got that explains what makes a good fit for us, and give it a score. Something has to think, something has to judge. So then you use AI. And so a lot of this now is about saying that's a deterministic process. That's like a process that requires judgment, intelligence.
Right.
And then you get to make the call. Should we use a human or should we use a machine to do that?
Yeah.
Because all of them can, be involved. So yeah, this is kind of multi-step, but if you break it down, it's actually not too bad. You just really have to think about things in their sort of smallest parts to work out what should you be using.
That is a really, really awesome response. I really like how you mentioned like plumbing.
Yeah.
I think that really encapsulates what you're saying in terms of like if something happens from an organization looking to really understand their operating system, like this is a good example of what they should do to follow, right?
Yeah.
I really actually.
I was going to say, well, last episode, at the end of last season, we were interviewing Sarah, and one of the things we sort of talked a little bit about workers there. We sort of introed this idea.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we were talking about was the cost that people were incurring spending tokens. Was a little one-liner in there, something like tokens don't grow on trees or something like that. And I think one of the things we realized really quickly is, okay, you want to use AI for very specific jobs. And if you can, or if it makes sense to, you want to use really smart models to answer really hard questions. You don't want to use really smart models to push email from one place to another to do plumbing work for you, right? And so that's why this is so important, is because you say, okay, let's use code, let's use automation. It's cheap, it's reliable, it's very precise.
Yes.
It's very loud when it fails. It's very kind of obvious. It's sort of, and then let's let it hand over to either a human or an AI who can think deeply but expensively about this work that needs to be done to produce it at a high standard. And then maybe let's hand it back to, deterministic process. So certainly from a smooth ops end, we do this sort of dance now where sometimes there's an automation running the process and then it gets handed off to a human who makes a judgment call about it. And often what will happen is an automation will drop something somewhere and then an AI might take a first pass at, say, writing a follow-up email to someone for an initial lead. But we would never send that, but it helps the process get started. And the AI reads our internal IP, does a pretty good job of making sense of it. And then the human looks at it and says, oh, it's probably better than I would have written, and maybe tunes some things up and then sends it out. So you can see like all the players involved.
That is really cool. Actually, can we have a look at that? Like, what was the first the worker that you've sort of built? And could we have a little sneak peek / demo? I think that would be really cool to see.
Sure. So the first one was probably email, like triaging email.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, calendars. We did calendars pretty quickly too because our business is a lot of meetings. And so we wanted to be able to have what appeared in our Google Calendars appear in our meetings database. But let's have a look at email.
Email,
I think that's a good place to start. So, I mean, automating email is not a new thing. There's been tools around that have tried to make it easy for people to bring email into Notion, but it's always been kind of clunky. It's never been seamless. I think the way email works is always quite different to a lot of other tools, and so there's just never been this like really nice, clean, easy way to do it. But what we have found internally with workers is that we've been able to build a tool that looks at our Google Workspace account for the whole team, so all of us, and
Oh,
we so not just one of us, like we've been able to set it up so that the worker looks at the whole domain's email, and any message that any of us send out, it now sees who that's sent to and then looks in our people database and says, do
wow.
we know who this person is? Like checks against the email. And then if we do know who the person is, then it says, are those people, like, are we working on any projects with them? And if we are, then it goes, great, let's find that project and let's create a client engagement, which is one of our
Yeah.
databases. We'll put the email in there, link it to the person, link it to the project, so that that project then has context about, like, the emails that we've been sending.
Yeah. So I can imagine that's saved a lot of pain, has made it smoother for your clients because there's less second guessing, right?
Yeah, I mean, the big thing really is that the system knows more about what's actually going on those jobs than any one of the individual team members. Like Helen and I might be working together on a project, and
Right.
maybe she emails the client, the night before the call, and I then go to do some prep for the meeting, and I'm working in Notion that knows that she sent the email and knows what was said and knows what the client's response was, even though I didn't get any of those emails. That kind of context and connection, like having the system be so across everything that's going on with the job has, certainly increased the quality of our work.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, I can imagine. And how have you sort of brought this whole system in play? How did you introduce this worker to your team? Has there been much confusion when you set this up?
No, I don't think so. I mean, there was bugs. I didn't get it right to start with, for sure. But you know what? The bugs are less technical and more us not having our system really, really clear. I mean, that always has been true about this sort of work, is actually understanding your own system and process is the hardest piece. And then if you understand it really well, it's easy to say, oh, this bit of technology is going to be useful or not, or this is the way we need to configure it. So I think, what was challenging early is just to understand our own process well enough and have everything set up. But I'm going to share this instance of it here. So this is a job with a client, Glenn, and you can see here I sent this email to him about. I don't even know. Oh yeah. Sorry, I sent this email to him to help him take advantage of the fact that Notion now lets consultants be in people's workspaces for free. And so I sent it to
That's
him.
cool.
You can see it's to him. It's from me. I sent it this morning. You can see the contact person, the person who put it here on the file, is actually the Notion worker itself. And then it's taken the email, pulled all the content of the email. It's got a link to the actual Gmail, so I can click it and go to the message itself. And then I'm using AI as a database agent to give me a really lightweight summary, so that when AI is looking at this project and it looks at all of the engagements at once, it doesn't have to open the page and read the email to understand what's going on. It can see a summary of it. And so this happens like all day, every day. I don't know how many emails our team sends, but heaps. And they just sort of filing in. No, there's no notifications. No one gets told about it. It's just added as context to the project. But then, of course, whenever anyone asks a question to Notion AI about that project, it has this email as context.
Full context. Yeah. So it'll pull through there. Nice.
Yeah, so it pulls through.
I got a question with this worker, right? Like, how did you decide like the boundary of this worker? Like, do you imagine that this email worker does 5 different things, or do you have 5 different small workers? I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. It does. Yeah. Generally speaking, it's useful to make them small, to make them kind of neat. When you start turning it into a Frankenstein and it does 5 different things, it just, you make a mess real quick. So for instance, like I'm using Google credentials for this worker so that it can talk to our Google workspace.
Okay.
I guess I could have potentially thought about putting the calendaring worker in here as well and say, look, every 15 minutes or half an hour or whatever when you run, check the calendar and check the email. But that didn't seem that smart, right? Because they're two completely separate processes. They,
Yes.
they've got whole different workflows. So this one just does email, but this one does a couple of things. One, it checks the emails that we send out. Two, it looks for anyone who's tagged an email as client email, and it'll run the same process on that. And then thirdly, there's a little Tim special in there where it just if you label something Tim's inbox, that email will just land in my personal Notion inbox so that I get notified about it. No one in the rest of my team does that, but that's something that I needed. So it's doing 3 different functions, but it's the same worker, but they're all in email and they're all essentially the same process. Pick this email up and drop it into the Notion world. Just because earlier we referred to the rules in the digital operating system, and it's really hard to build this like complete world this world has to run night and day, right? When you're not watching, when you're asleep, this digital operating system's still functioning, and it's not like it just turns on when you do. And so how do we know what's happened overnight? How do we know if something errored or if something's not how can we sort of track things down? And so I built this run log, which you can see there's a whole bunch of like items being filed in here, sometimes from workers, sometimes from skills, sometimes like automatically scheduled, other times, Jean from our team, she manually ran this skill. It just kind of goes on, and there's 10,000 records in here from the last couple of months. So, but it tells us what actually happened. It tells us if there was an error, it gives us sort of summaries. It tells us, what things got changed, etc. So these kinds of things have been a really critical piece of the puzzle in building not just one worker, but like a whole series of workers that are automating, the work that we're doing. Because we're running, I think, 12 or 14 maybe workers at the moment. Actually, let's jump in to just show people the back end piece. So if you go to the workers section in the side here, you can go and have a look. It's still pretty light, to be honest. Like there's not tons of options in here, but this will tell you all of the different workers that you have, who made them and whether they're switched on or not. So you can see, we're syncing calendar information. We're capturing emails. We use Zcal for people to book appointments with us, and that gives us notification about that. We have a worker that helps us keep our project summaries up to date that runs in the background. This is emailing, like this is mail out software. We importing Google Docs. We don't use this one so much, but I built it for a client. And so interesting to kind of like I can drop a PDF or a Word doc in a Google Drive and it will import the content into a Notion page for us, which is quite useful. I sync my contacts. So like I have my contacts, but that's the people database. We push things to 0. We set up access, like row-based permissions in our projects internally for a team. There's a button that does it. So you can see, there's a heap of others. And at the moment we're exploring the Microsoft suite to be able to do email and calendar for a bunch of clients. And like this has become a key part of how we integrate our Notion world with those other worlds. And then sometimes how we run automations internally inside Notion itself.
I see. And before you set all these workers up, what did this sort of process look like for you internally?
A bunch of it was N8N.
Yeah.
So used to do a few things there. It was a bit more of a hodgepodge of services running on different platforms depending on what we needed. Whereas now we've been able to consolidate it all into the one space. Really focus on, and having like things like this run log. I never had this before because I had some things running on Make and a few things running on N8N and others were native integrations. Whereas now this is a much more robust system because I can see across the whole thing. I'm actually looking at both AI and automations that run and they all tell me, this is the run log of everything that's going on kind of behind the scenes. They're not free though, so we should talk about that.
Yeah, I was going to say you moved from N8N and all these other platforms and I can imagine you're already at an advantage from costs perspective. But like, I think, yeah, you'll acknowledge what I was going to ask with what the viewers are thinking. Like, how much has these workers cost for you to do this?
There's a bit more data in here than there was when we had a look a few months ago. So
Yeah.
this is a combination of both custom agents that we run. So that's actually pretty
Right.
good kind of insight in terms of, what it's really costing us to run these agents. So, I mean, just quickly, like our meeting follow-up, you can see it's cost us sort of 6,390 credits. So each
How
one
much
of
is
those
that?
credits, 1,000 credits is $10 US. So we've spent $63.90
Yeah.
on meeting follow-up. Now, meeting follow-up for us is not just as simple as like make a summary. We are making a summary and updating a project, but we're also adding an entry to our engagements database. We're
Yeah.
pulling all the tasks out. We are logging every single decision that gets made in the meeting, and we are pulling all the client signals out. So to help us sort of determine what are some common challenges clients are experiencing at the moment, and to
Right.
sort of see those themes. So this is a lot of work, and it's using a more expensive model. So it costs about $1 a meeting. But if I was to try and do that work, I would have to spend maybe an hour analyzing a
Right.
call to do the kind of quality that it's working. So $1
Yeah.
an hour is pretty good, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, we weren't talking about them. We're talking about workers. So if we just focus on the workers, you can see here what we're spending. So the numbers are much, much lower.
Wow, that's so
This,
much lower than wow.
yeah. Yeah. So this is this month. So my month rolls over. So it's like 3 weeks worth of usage. And so it's syncing like 6 calendars. And so that's, like nearly 700 credits, so nearly $7.
Right.
And probably the other interesting one is email. So it's used $1.20 to sync, and it says it's done 741 runs. So yeah, I mean, to me, this is like great value for money. I could do it cheaper if I ran like a N8N server on a VPS somewhere and I wasn't paying N8N directly. I was just like hosting my own box somewhere.
Yeah.
But it would be less secure because everything's got to go over to N8N and then back again. Way more trouble
Yeah.
to manage. And I wouldn't get this kind of like everything centered on the one, world piece. So if I was trying to do it on the cheap, like real cheap, then I wouldn't do it this way. But given that, this has cost $1, it's not too bad.
Yeah, nice. So
Yeah.
I got a question with this. Has any of these ever broken? Like if one of the workers stop failing, is it the run log lets you know? Or like how do you find out if something sort of breaks with like an update happens or a permissions breaks? Like has that happened yet or is it?
Yeah, sure. I think one of the things to say, and Sarah mentioned this when we met with her, is that like this developer platform, first version of it is pretty developer focused. I've learned to do things that I never knew how to do before. So I don't think you actually do have to be a developer because I can't write code. But with coding agents now, it's actually a whole lot more accessible than it was. But I think for a lot of like my clients, they'd never even consider jumping into that. So I think the first version of this is still a little bit inaccessible because, like if I drag something else onto this screen here, I'm spending a little bit of time doing things like this, hanging out with Claude Code.
Yeah.
Me earlier trying to debug why the email capture didn't have any lines in the run log. It was still running, but it hadn't run properly. It hadn't logged it properly. So and then it literally went and rewrote some code and then realized that, hang on, all the workers were experiencing this same problem. And so then it rolled it out to all my workers. And I was doing that, like just before we jumped on. So yes, things break. Of course they do. It's technology.
Yes.
Services, external services especially, will change the way something works. And, you've built a bridge between two worlds. If one of those worlds substantially changes, your bridge might collapse. So it's not without its issues. But that's always been the case for automations and integrations is they can be fragile because you're trying to connect these different worlds. You're trying to, talk to multiple different sources to try and pull something off. I haven't found it like a huge time sink, but I think the exciting piece for me, especially for like lots of our clients, is one, we can do things for them that like were much harder to do before. And they really need it because they want all the context in their Notion world. But the other piece is, and Sarah sort of mentioned this, is Notion are building a world for people where they won't need to be super technical to be able to do those things. So I would imagine what we're going to see is you'll be able to talk to Notion AI and say, I need a worker to be able to do this. Can you write the code for me? I mean, you can actually do that now and then download the code and install it. But I don't think it's going to be too far away where, Notion AI kind of handholds you through that process. So you have to get it conceptually, but you don't have to get all the technical details.
Gotcha. So if I'm someone that wants to like create my own calendar sync right now, as of this moment, is Claude Code, understand and feed through your Notion, like as much context as possible from your operating system. Is there a resource or process that you'd recommend that they follow to set up their first worker because they've been so inspired seeing what you've done?
And they want to tinker. Yeah, for sure. I think maybe what we'll do is I'll like publish a couple of things that I've used to set mine up. So, well, just quickly, the process really is like anything that you want to build, you need to get really clear about what it is that you want it to do. So that's the first bit. You can't just, I wouldn't encourage people to just rock up to the AI with no clue about what they're looking for and say, let's start building a worker. But so I put docs like this together, which were the thinking and the work with AI that I did to understand, okay, like what is this? Why are we doing it? How should it work? Like what is the process? And then, this, then I grabbed Claude Code and said, all right, have a look at this doc. I also wrote we write these technical briefs. And so, let's just grab this one. And so it's more of a handover brief. We used to write them for people and now we still write them for people, but sometimes we're usually writing them for people and AI. And so it's got a bunch more technical information in it. I don't know if this one does, but it'll often have, bits of code and, specific information that is going to be technically required to be able to build it. And then, work with the Claude Code to say, all right, like here are the Notion worker docs because you need to understand how to make Notion workers. It goes and reads those. And then together you go back and forth and it literally writes the code and then you can get it to deploy the code from your workspace. So I think I'll put a little package together to say, here's an example that you could sort of model off. And then, it's worth tinkering with because once you start doing it, you realize, okay, there's a lot of this that is very accessible. We can just jump in and try it out and, have a good time.
That's awesome, Tim. I'm excited to even tinker with that myself. I mean, I don't use workers yet. I played around with it, but even that email one is like it's gold mine, right? Because it made me realize for me, it's like if I run a weekly review and I need to say from like brand deals or sponsorships, it comes in, I can have a worker that has that whole context and I have the meeting notes and it's sort of just pulling that sources. And I really like that visual that you made. It's like they all sort of work together and you're just creating like this. Yeah, it's a completely new world that we're living in. And I feel like that guy that you share is really cool to experiment.
Possible. So very cool. Anyway, we've rattled on for long enough about this, I think. Hopefully people have got a bit of a window about what's possible. And I'm super excited to start talking to some businesses where they've come along and they've implemented this and learn from their lessons, hear their stories.
Me too. Can you give a little teaser on the next guest? A little without telling who the guest is?
Well, I think what's cool about this is it doesn't have to be a tech company. Right? Like a lot of the time when you see this online or even when you look at sort of Notion's marketing, whatever, they're telling stories of OpenAI and, these super technical companies. And so you sort of think, well, yeah, of course they're doing stuff like that. But the clients that we're working with are, law firms and designers and people who work with film and people who are not necessarily writing code on their own, not even thinking about that, but they've got real world use cases that need this or, would benefit from this a lot. So I'm looking forward to introducing people to some of those stories because I think it's, they're the real stories.
Yeah.
Rather than people who do this, for fun in their spare time anyway.
Yeah. Oh, it's exciting.
It is cool.
Cool.
Well, thanks everyone for watching. Follow along for season 2, where you'll find out and learn more about stories from founders and operators building their digital operating systems with integrations and AI and automations. So see you at the next one.